Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna get another look here real quick. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to do that. I'm gonna do another video on what I was referring to a little bit earlier. But yeah, there's been quite a bit going on, and I don't know why it keeps doing it, and have an idea maybe if it's a direction just because I listen to so very many songs and watch all kinds of music videos, and at this point, I mean, if there's like a song in my category or even something other than my category, and most of the time I know a little bit of something, beyond what I normally listen to, somehow, some way. But anyway, yeah. So like on my YouTube.com channel, and I don't know why it seemed to be, only my uploads involving a previous email address. I'm on an iPhone 13, not right now, but I have an Apple iPhone 13. And the thing with this is that I'm on a Motorola right now, what you're seeing right now. And I don't see the need for some idea of like a digitized effects. Sometimes I'm not real sure but anyone who knows anything about the conversion from analog to digital would know that like weather condition would present maybe the digitized little squares for a weak signal during a bad weather, or some thought of like some transparent type of a digitized format that would be the perception, maybe not a normal perception of digitized breaking up into little squares, but like a transparent. And that's happening on some of the videos, not all of them. And more so like with me, like on the drums, and like wasn't like that at all. And it's really presenting an issue of like seem to be like whether or not if it's going to be a condition of not cool, who's in control of that, or what's really involved with like networking. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd refer to like a Wi-Fi manager and webmaster, or some idea of like making a grade to be on a internet protocol of a local area network. Well, anyway, like with YouTube, okay. And I've mentioned this before when I very first got started, okay, because really I've been using YouTube.com at my channel, WadeASVPriddy, PRIDDY at YouTube.com. And it was my thought, really of like using it as for like a music video portfolio. And really the way everything has really been happening has promoted, thought really, I felt the need to hurry up and get it on. And I don't know what the deal is about that, but it seemed to be like really maybe the perception within range of maybe, what that has really been. In any case, yeah, so like feeling the need, the thought of taking time maybe, and it really, I really don't have much of concern anyway as far as like, I really, I don't really think that really me editing anything, that me on the drums is really just not what it is. Any need to edit anything for me like live is like ridiculously something like not on this planet, okay? And yeah, because really, I mean, really as many songs as and years as I've been practicing, I mean, I like, as far as like other people's music, and if it just has to be a generic or, a category of like progressive hard rock or, Christian contemporary or whatever the case may be, I mean, me even having a need to edit, I mean, just really isn't it. And I've said that before. And the thing with it is that, other people's music that really uses it as a standard in any kind of way is strictly, for the purpose of like a portfolio of, the ability and others' perception of maybe something they might maybe consider, maybe something to, further, find out about. But in any case, yeah, so like I was like doing that, okay. And, some, idea of, having a need to, take a little time off and break it up. And now I'm inside a tent in my own home, okay. And it's really got to that point that, some idea, of, there's really quite a bit going on. It seems to be like really this time inside here is really not my idea. Because what you're seeing right now, okay, as compared to, it's the same room where my drum set in like virtually every music video. I was in the same room before this channel was actually put up, and other factors were like taking place, and whatever the case may be, it seemed to be like like a bunch of entire television programming of like banking systems and entire networks, like coming through Pearland, and like I mean, it seemed to be like really ultimately like really not my idea of like a a normal situation. And really, I'm not trying to have an issue of constant change presenting an issue. But the thing with this is that, feeling the need to hurry up and just get it on there, feeling that need is like really not cool to begin with. But in any case, but I just wanted to make that clear about, anything about any kind of editing involving me with me on my drums, or anything I practice like the 80s and 90s. And like even now, I'm more than, 3,000 songs, individual songs. I'd say probably around 150, if not more, band singers and instrumentals. And I think if I'm going to do any more of other people's music, it'll probably be more so the synthesizer side, the synth wave, and all that, and try and find something a little more orchestrated as far as synthesizers go. And in any case, yeah, so like me getting into my original music, it's really kind of frustrating thinking that some idea of a intellectual property might only be the thought of what royalties means. I mean, if it's actually using an easement of what duration only means. I mean, as far as like royalties goes, like in entertainment law, I mean, the way it's taught and perceived as that it's an automatic 50 years of like normally of like a royalties, okay? And it seems to be like everything I've ever heard has been like everything really not quite the perception of really the way it is. With everything that's involved in it. And me actually getting to my original music has become like the thought of me continually listening to a lot of music I like listening to anyway. But it's got to the point, you got to be kidding me. Am I going to get to my original music? It's really what it's gotten to, and all this is like going on, okay? And it really has got, kind of like seriously not cool just thinking about, hey man, is it really? I mean, am I going to get to my original music? I mean, is it going to happen, beyond the thought of maybe, yeah, so like anyway, okay. So like anyway, I was like mentioning that I have like 13 songs. I mean, it's like, it's going on like, I mean, a long time, okay. And actually completing it as a solo drummer, and likewise getting the vocals in with it. And I'm really not trying to do anything other as like a solo drummer singing, and I'm actually trying to accomplish getting, the idea of like a compatibility, the kind of person and the way I think about, really virtually everything. And really a factor of like alphanumerics and linguistics has been such a major thing that has really turned into, in the beginning it was like a fascination at some point, and getting over the thought of like, wow, that's like really not a joke, And I mean, really developing some serious, time, really doing a lot of studying in that way. And in any case, so like it has got to the point of a whole new perception and perspective, like on virtually everything. It seems to be everything that it's kind of like I mentioned to my father. It's kind of like how you go into a search, like everything you've ever known is not the way it is. And sometimes with alphanumerics and linguistics, I mean, it's like really that way, and really, and including the intended use of like the way language really is. Yeah. So in any case, yeah. So like that has become a whole new perception and direction. As far as my songwriting goes. But I have like 13 songs, okay, and like Annotated American and Going 125, Hidden Escrow, God, Eternal Lights, and there's like 13 of them, okay, and On the Inside and On the Onside thing, and so like there's major influences that really as a drummer, that really predominantly like through my earlier beginning years as a drummer. And I mentioned previously that my first compact disc, what was then a cassette and a compact disc, the Rush Moving Pictures, was like the first compact disc, really a cassette, because I had to use a cassette because I was like teaching myself, so I was like doing a whole lot of rewinding. And I decided, to pick the most complex drummer at the time that I really liked, and that was like Rush Moving Pictures, my first entire complete that I actually, learned on, but and actually completed, accomplishing some idea of, if it has to be taught, it's only based upon, the availability of equipment and actually having everything needed, for that, instead of compromising, like, having to start out with a 5-piece, doing like a Rush Moving Pictures on a 5-piece drum set. That's almost like really seriously not funny, right? But anyway, yeah, so that was really what it was at first, okay? But anyway, yeah, so like getting that sound on a 5-piece and and actually having to rewind a cassette, I mean, continually. I mean, really, it took me about like a year and a half, 18 months, okay, to actually complete it and progress as going through a progression of drums, different types of drums from Ludwig, like the CB700, because of the availability and it being a double bass and, enough, to handle, a band like Rush, actually presented, the economic factor of availability. So like I got it, okay. So, I mean, it accomplishes that much about, having a sound for that particular purpose. Yeah. So like, anyway, so like now I have the Pearl Vision, the Pearl Vision VSX in a Strata-Red, but now actually I'm starting to get, and yay, all right, finally. Yeah. The, Pearl Vision, VSX Strata Blue. Okay. And once again, it's like really cool. And, going to work on it, getting that blue chromium rim slugs, mounts, and all that with the mounting arms on the bass, as well as the hardware, the hi-hat stand, and all the stands. If I can get all the stands that way, as well as the pasty color sound. I think they're 900s, but anyway, they're blue. Okay. But anyway, yeah. So like I'm spending all that time on her because I started getting into some of my original music. And I'm kind of like a little careful about, just like putting my own original music on there without anything more than just putting it up there. But in any case, yeah, so like, based upon available information, and sometimes that is more so as far as like, if it's just the ability of, if it needs to just be categorized as a preference based upon, some idea of like a perfection. Everything that I've used as a standard, in the 80s is pretty much on, actually I hadn't even counted, but I actually had more than 500 actually recorded. Some was on SD cards and like, where'd they go already? Okay. So like, anyway, so like I've been like recording on my mobile phone more because I had a video camera and, using SD cards, just kind of like I couldn't even keep them in my own home. Okay. In any case, so like everything you're seeing on my phone is like, was like really going on with it. And, ultimately, I'm looking at that Sony. I'm still looking at still have it because it seems to be like one of the better digital video camcorders, the Sony HXR NX100 digital video camcorder, because it has the optic zoom and the digital optic zoom, totaling 48 magnification power. Powered magnification is 48, 24 optical and 24 digital. Totaling 48 powered magnification, which is like really cool, and it has all the connectivity for like live streaming as well as like live broadcasting, connecting. I mean, it has the connectivity and ability with other equipment as well, to like straight to a television station, even VSAT and internet VSAT and real VSAT, and yeah, so it has all the connectivity for that. So that's like one of the better ones. It's like right at 1,500. Yeah, so like I'm still looking for that, and now seems to be the issue of networks. Kind of like where to go, I mean, here in Pearland, okay, it's kind of like it has really gotten seriously not cool, okay. Yeah, it seems to be like all kinds about things about boycotts and embargo, dimensional clauses, and some method of banking and holding, and God, you gotta be kidding me. And continually, it seems to me like whether or not if the future is now. I'm come on, he's like, you gotta be kidding me. It's like the future is now. You gotta be kidding me. When I like retroactive, like before I was born, right? Yeah, because some of the stuff that I'm talking about is kind of like you got to be seriously not funny about it. But so anyway, so like I'm working on that right now because as far as like a commercial venue, and the reason that I'm focusing more and really when the time is right and getting the commercial venue to actually live in as a living quarter, because there's been like a lot of information that I've been referring to. It seemed to be like the thing about Mercedes and its emblem and its symbolic representation of the 3 point in so many ways, and 3 being 56, like Y2K, and a combination of alphanumerics and numerical and alphanumerical equaling 94, or the thing about the 3 being 56 and papermate and 56 is 10 based upon alphanumerics and numerical and alphanumerical based upon pronunciation. And the Roe v. Wade thing. I mean, it's ultimately getting to, think about the annotated and the abortion adoption and, some idea of like an acronym being used for a separation between church and state, or, the difference between, what a neighborhood is not, whether a degree level is or is not the issue of like whether a commercial venue is actual thought of continual nonstop participation with television, or what a circuit is in that way, as compared to a neighborhood. My thought about a neighborhood now is kind of like not the grade, and I'm looking to get the grade and get the commercial venue to live in, and as well as like music video business and everything about it, with accommodations and all the equipment and recording equipment, the video equipment, and the accommodations for, like really getting into it, and empowered with like parking, with like 3-level parking, and even helicopter landing pads and a hangar with a sliding pad. Yeah. I mean, for real. Yeah. So like, my whole thought and perception about what a neighborhood is, has completely changed, because there's a lot of information I've been referring to on my youtube.com channel at WadeASVPriddy. And I always spell my last name Priddy at youtube.com. Seems to be like a lot of information involving SSI. And ultimately, once again, the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, and the thought of, International Space Station, International Superstar, and supplemental security, and superstar intelligence, and all that good stuff. Okay. But anyway, yeah, so like it seems to be like the ratio about http:// and all that. But once again, it seems like the student loan as compared to a Pell Grant, and the way a forbearance works as compared to a default, it's almost like why one pronoun of the 4 types of pronouns can be used as a subject when it comes to a student loan, and that being a guaranteed loan as compared to involving with a Pell Grant, presents the issue of the 4 of like forbearance or default. And it's like the whole entire issue of principle, it seemed to be almost like methods of like whether manufacturing is really the issue of like Ulysses S. Grant, and just pronunciation of the president of the U.S. $50 bill, presenting America and Alpha America that way. Ulysses almost is like a borrowed terminology of like international financial management, in the form of like what only having fair use of intellectual property might only seem as the name Ulysses, as compared to Grant. I mean, it's almost like straight up like a student loan. And most people don't. It's really the deal about information, and what a person's mind is programmed to automatically don't be fooled by imitation saying. But in that really the effect of television and information that way, students identifying student loans as compared to a grant, and it's always presented as a loan, not a grant. Yet it involves a grant. It's almost like the U.S. patent is in copyright and the trademark issue, involving like Ulysses as a grant that way with a student loan, presenting all the information, and why the Fifth Amendment is not a nonprofit organization. And think of it is, it goes on and on. Even EBT with the Lone Star card and SNAP benefits, and there's a lot of things about that are in sets of 3. Even the thought of like in between like ABC 13 Houston to ABC 7 in Los Angeles, in a difference of 6. And it seemed to be like ABC 13's like prefix of 666, and it's almost like a Route 66 as compared to the idea of like the difference between Los Angeles and Houston between ABC 13 and ABC 7 is a different than 6. Likewise, with Roosevelt New Deal Act, it seemed to be presenting several issues between Theodore to Franklin Roosevelt, being 6 presidential terms between, and the Roosevelt New Deal Act, and it seems to be the big deal about the Oldsmobile Delta 88, and the way of the biggest mouth of the river being identified as a delta, and in schematics it's identified the delta as like a triangle, and what that is to the pyramid, or thought about the pi r square thing about the 6-point star of like Israel. And while I'm thinking about it, I want to mention this so I can come back and try and remember it. But it's Alpha America 38, like Donald Trump, and I was referring to like the Golden Arches, representing like during the Gold Rush, being baptized during the Gold Rush, as compared to maybe what hop sing might mean to jaywalking, or think about the clam in the river, or Calamity Jane. That's the clam. Climbing the ladder, think about the Calamity Jane and the Omega being like the horseshoe, and the 8 ohms of resistance, and what 8 is to the figure 8 in the ice skate and ice capades, as compared to on a zoom lens representing infinity of a perfect 10-10 vision of like in the planetarium of like using the stars for navigation. And many factors of like entertainment all that way, including We International seems to be a big deal about the Houston area, not limited to, and Capitol Records and other things about that. So like it seemed to be like the big deal right there about the three that seemed to be like involving even OSHA that's normally involved with occupational health and safety administration, and some idea between the equator and the operator, and the alphanumerics of 0 being 74, and Zion 1,000 Years of Peace, and Grover Cleveland that way, and like Utah. And what Utah is the alphanumerics of 50, and like Ulysses S. Grant that way, of even Zion National Park that way. And some biblical reference and geographic attachment to like an American origin of the Book of Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that way. But it seems to be the thing about so many factors, including like American Amplified Living Bible. But the thing is what I'm referring to with OSHA. It seems to be that it's normally involving like construction of high-rise buildings and like huge commercial buildings, sometimes hotels. But the thing is that OSHA is like a known thing for like a construction, whether it's unionized and or what is called non-union. But the thing is that whether it's union or non-union, OSHA is normally always there for like construction to maintain safety standards. And the thing about the pronunciation of OSHA and the thought of like the ocean seemed to be the deal about the factors of the Better Business Bureau, as well as like auditing legal media and deposition, or what the real deal is about the consumer electronic consumption, or television programming. And the thing is that really when it comes to television programming, sometimes the thought of electronic consumption in the form of programming, as far as K-television goes, most people don't think about it as absolute values in algebra class, okay? The two vertical bars, or some idea of like PG-13 rating. Yeah, for real. Or some idea of squelch, representing some idea of like a, practical application of like pi r squared applied to itself, separate from its intended use, applied to itself that way, a pronunciation equating to like two circles, almost like perfect 10-10 vision, in a way of like what ACTP : // presenting the colon as a ratio. That way, with like even applying the principle of the practical application of pi r squared to itself, it will actually present two zeros, two O's in the figure 8 and like the infinite lines. And the infinite lines is really about the perfect 10-10 vision on a zoom lens. As it doesn't really have to be horizontal, but really truthfully, I mean, based upon placement on a zoom lens, it would be more the horizontal or the altimeter thing of like a three-dimensional zoom lenses that would, go in outer space, and the exponential quotients of powers of multiplication, not limited to the planetarium, but yeah. And in that way, it kind of seemed to be the deal about the infinite lines presenting the perfect 90-degree right angle combined for infinite lines. Likewise, the pi r squared factor of like, two 90-degree right angles presented as a total of like 180 as a telepathic answer, and all kinds of stuff. But once again, all that information seems to be ultimately getting to like a new development. And the academics, in a way, of alphanumerics and linguistics and the available information, it seems to be so much about the brains, about identifying, and if the word just has to be enforced, or as far as like all the brains about it seems to be like all the sets of three and what Mercedes is about, in a way of like construction of what a building is going to be and maintain as a living quarter, and not a question of television programming being used as like litigation or de facto, or what a writ habeas corpus might only mean based upon programming on television or K-television. And if that's ultimately originating from some idea of like a jurisprudence, or I like to sprite you with a black back, of like identifying whether or not pastel green is only the thought of the colors of Sprite, as compared to, the province being like identified as a pastel green, like a golf course, or, the book of jurisprudence presenting, the black back ultimately going to the Fox 29 News in Philadelphia. And all that language, a thing about between Theodore Franklin Roosevelt and Benjamin Franklin flying a kite, representing the U.S. $100 bill, what the 100 Club is, to the keynote, and citing legal search engines that way with like LexisNexis as a keynote. LexisNexis and like Westlaw, Benjamin Franklin getting all that like international electronic engineering and flying a kite thing about, the key in the middle of the night, and, discovering some idea like Tom Edison's version of like, what it means to be lit up in the middle of the night. Yeah. So like, anyway, Benjamin Franklin representing some idea of like a connectivity between like even the Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal Act in Philadelphia, that's 200-year celebration that way. Seemed to be, some idea like base foundation of American history, not limited to. And it seemed all that information in sets of three involving a student loan and a grant, as compared to what a default and what a default is not, based upon a forbearance, totally completely changes the entire situation in a phenomenally very positive direction. And that is true about many other factors involving like even EBT and SNAP food benefits and Lone Star card that way. And the thing about the Lone Star card, it seemed to be like almost like in the Houston area, like the San Jacinto Monument, or the idea of like making it gray to be on internet protocol of a local area network, like the San Jacinto Monument would present maybe as a memorial, or a dual credit. It really is like a 3-in-1 memorial. Some ascending factors of a star is born, more so of a telepathic star would be more like it, really, in a way of like a memorial becoming like a monument, and having some like altimeter reality about some biblical reference in the way of like a Mount Olives and the word transfiguration, re-entering heaven thing about it. In the book of Thessalonians, as compared to some idea of like some idea of like right before Armageddon, like there's going to be like the rapture in Alphamarks of 99, and in the meeting in the sky thing, as compared to the ascending from Mount Olives thing. It's kind of like a retro deal, and in that way, it's kind of cool, in a way of, because I see Christianity in a whole different perspective based on some idea of experience in alphanumerics and linguistics in a whole different perspective, and applying that alphanumeric word of transfiguration 192, okay, to Inuit Coptus on the backside of the US $1 bill, equating to 12, okay. And I'm sure that most quarterbacks will grasp the meaning of the quarterback as a bicentennial quarter thing about the alphanumerics 200-year celebration, and all that stuff about transportation, Lord Jesus Christ, a plenipotentiary, and the list goes on about a bicentennial drummer and a quarter. That way, or the 100 Club, quarter being alphanumerically 100, as compared to the word hospital, or what hospitality is in a way of manufacturers going to a circuit, and whether some real factors about that within itself. Yeah, so like any case, and it seemed to be the big deal about the 100 Club is the alphanumerics of, once again, the 64 and the 36 combined in alphanumeric equations that ultimately get to, the alphanumerics 181 Houston, Texas, and we international, and electronic power, and all that stuff about even like Pearland, Texas, USA, alphanumerics USA, and attenuation USA, and yeah. So like it really goes on and on about all that stuff about the Pearland and Pearland, Texas, that way of even a Purple Heart USA. And I use USA even more so because it's the acronym, and the alphanumerics of 41, which seems to be significant, more so as an acronym. Sometimes it's like, the word home, it represents some idea. I mean, there's more to be done, and that's why I'm looking at a commercial venue and the whole new idea, like getting above like any and every neighborhood, even like, 2 9-hole golf courses, really, and getting with the communications that way. That doesn't present the issue of whether or not if television programming is only the perception of whether litigation de facto is only the idea of a writ of habeas corpus based upon television programming, or some idea of like a participating factor manufacturing the idea of auditing legal media and deposition with some cause and effect, or what the deal is about having fair use of intellectual property, or whether if that is only an issue of an ATM being used as a fixture representing some idea predominantly an ATM involving money, whether it's a national deficit available in closed captioning for the hearing impaired, or if it's really the idea of maybe, the whole entire point about, what endorsement really is, and not placing geographic attachment of, the name and the endorsement as compared to, finding out that that's most people's idea of a checking account involving a debit card would almost be the automatic perception that it's a digital wallet. And really, I'm discovering that the bank is really standing up and not really anything other than not accepting a debit card as a digital wallet. And really, I can go on and on about the checking account. The thing is that really, so I finally, making its way, beyond a checking account. Yay, all right. And using, a prepaid deal about the not a checking account at all, because it seemed to be like ultimately it's got to the point of whether if ATM being used as a fixture is an option of a living quarter or litigation in fact only based upon a root of habeas corpus of only what neighborhoods normally mean as a non-degreed issue, normally a more so non-degreed, even degreed and not knowing. It's just that really I've been really experiencing some real seriously not funny stuff about, ignoring it would be not experiencing any of that at all, but really, me on YouTube and previously maybe not realizing something about maybe the thought that, me being a drummer, really wouldn't be a question, but, having other, factors involved, that presented, whether or not to have a work schedule or a schedule would present, a direction, a more insight, like it is now on SSI. And now it seemed like when I was really starting to upload with, myself on using a standard, what I've chosen, as a drummer, seem to present that issue, whether or not if, anything other than, me getting to my original music has been really, it's really not a problem. It's just that really, why is it? Is really what it's gotten to. And it's kind of I don't mind listening and, what I use as a standard, at all. And I'm not trying to, do anything that would be anything other than acceptable without really any complaint by any band, musician, singer, or anything. Because really, me using anyone else's music is, and for any reason, anything other as a preference as a standard. Because really everything I practice, is probably phenomenally the best on in the entire planet. Regardless if it's a genre or as musicians and instruments. There might be the thing about lyrics is in a way that might present the issue, whether it's the idea of civil or or some untamed version of what's deemed as accepted, not identified as hey, you have a place to stay in the United States, right? Yeah. So anyway, so anything other than the determinant, yeah. Yeah. So, all that Stargate program, all that planning of, whether a PG-13 would only maybe thought be charter district and only what only PTA members might mean in school districts as compared to some degree level of university level, but present maybe, making, some idea of transparency in the chancellor's office. Yeah. Some idea, maybe something other than maybe the thought of the history of money, not placing boundaries and limitations on, the name. They just want a checking account and endorsement, oh God, heaven forbid. You mean so much more. Yeah, it's just you need to know it, right? Yeah, so it seems to me some kind of geographical attachment and identifying the US dollar would be some idea of, some thought of hey, but hey, where's the check go after, transaction in the bank? You gotta be kidding me. Well, anyway, so I'm going to kind of skip all that right now. It's already gone 34 minutes and 3 seconds right now. But, yeah, so anyway, it's I was looking at all that information about buildings, what the definition is as some neighborhoods stress mud tax, municipal utilities, drainage district. Others seem to be, there's been the phrase of chartering, districting, and zoning. And it seemed to be the deal about, maybe only what the Social Security Administration might only mean at its max in Washington, D.C. And ultimately, it seems to be really, if it ultimately gets to the Social Security Administration, ultimately meaning that virtually everyone in the neighborhood is ultimately limited to based upon their participation, based upon, the accusation, hey, there was options and choices made, and they were made, and most people might only maybe decide whether or not if a 1090 or some idea of like maybe not necessarily a sole proprietorship, would be maybe something more than the accusation of not just endorsing an employment check and like depositing in a checking account, or some idea of a DBA, doing business as, the way it's taught in some. And I'm not sure if it's like every paralegal or if it's just like doing business as a and instead of maybe the thought of a database administration is really what it ultimately gets to. If it's only an option of what separation between church and state only means, or some idea of a defector seeking amnesty based upon, a fixture like an ATM being used, or something like storage area network, and some other idea of like where that happens at in corporate venue, or something like, corporate executive office and some like, shareholding method, okay? So in any case, so like, in that way, it's kind of like I was thinking about the, all that stuff, and in the way that, and I mean, if it's ultimately getting that a commercial venue is above the bank, well, making a grade beyond like a local area, internet protocol of a local area network seems to be like really the thing to do, and that's where I'm going with all of it, with this information that it's on my YouTube.com channel, WadeASVPriddy, PRIDDY at YouTube.com, because it seemed to be really, I mean, the core curriculum, I mean, of like, building, high rises, I mean, for real. And the thought of some of the color codes of the Air Force One and non-taxable income of the SSI supplemental security, combined with like the thought of a HTTP : and the colon being used as a ratio between like the misappropriation allocation of Mississippi of the ISS and the SSI, and some idea of other factors in the letters involved of an International Space Station, International Superstar, Supplemental Security, and Superstar Intelligence. And, really, I mean, ultimately, the biggest mouth of the river and the connectivity between the delta and the schematics and the electronic power, identifying the triangle and the pyramid on the U.S. dollar, I mean, it seems to be the big deal about the United States Treasury in my mind about defining the meaning of, like, multinational corporations as well as, like, international banking systems and networking that way. So, like, I mean, I'm including all this because it seemed to be, like, a whole bunch of paperwork that defines the meaning of degree and electronics more so of, like, a beyond like paper made or a checking account as a method of banking, or the categorization of any money or any checking system as commercial paper. I mean, television actually provides commercial paper as terminology, sometimes as transcripts. The New York Stock Exchange provides commercial paper in the way of involving, like the Federal Open Market window and the discount window and the 12 Federal Reserve Banks of, importing and exporting huge shipments involving 12 Federal Reserve Banks as gross national product, more so. And warehousing seem to be, although domestic and monetary only seems to be really the only issue. If monetary represents anything other than maybe, a bunch of idea like endorsed checks or having the right to assemble, or what aggregates really is of monetary, domestic, and gross national product. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the factor of gross national product representing a nation's predominant source of manufacturing products as compared to the thought of, human capital and the human factor, whether degree level or non-degree issue is really the issue involving, the operating equator and what, the alphanumeric 108 and Chevrolet is to it, or the 0 bin 64 and HTTP : and design. It's ultimately getting, some idea. I mean, if the separation between church and state only represents, in my mind, something maybe the experience of like color code of like the United States constitutional law and like statutes annotated, really even color code of space exploration, international space station. The thing it is that really, ultimately, if that's all it is, and the United States Code's annotated in the words of the New Testament. And I mean, if ultimately the separation between church and state really gets to the United States Code's annotated in the New Testament and the King James Version Bible, or what that is to American Amplified in a way of like even, the Book of Mormon, the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, the thing of it is that when it really gets to it, I mean, ultimately it gets to, an academic level that presents, really the factor of like what Zion is at a degree level of like, a minimum of maybe, only what binary numbers might only represent to the 10 Commandments and maybe identifying a way of life that's like naive to, what an ATM really is that way, and constitutional law and amendments in that way. An ATM is a storage area network, or some idea of what home might only mean, and in compliance and not being accused of being a defector seeking amnesty, or some idea of a warranty presenting appreciation in the form of, well, it's not really depreciation, or vandalism. It's like concrete and steel. Vandalize what? In human capital, vandalize what? Yeah, so it's like not an ergonomic participating factor of deciding whether or not if only a residential area in the neighborhood is the idea of only if depreciation is the only thought of a defector seeking amnesty, or some idea of like non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization in the form of only what a name might only mean as an endorsement as compared to the U.S. dollar not really being thoroughly identified, or what U.S. $1,000 to Grover Cleveland is to Zion in 1,000 years of peace, and identifying whether or not separation between church and state is going to really be a factor of a color code of the United States Codes annotated in biblical reference to the mere words of the Lord Jesus Christ as a plenipotentiary, like anyone like with a U.S. $1, having something to say about themselves. And, I have plenty to say about this because it seemed to be like really getting above like any neighborhood, including, any comparable, association of like 2 9-hole golf courses. Ultimately, if it's really a factor, whether civil issues is only a degree level, or participating in the circuit is only the idea of whether if a PG-13 rating is the only idea of 13 stars above an eagle. If the 13 stars is only representing some idea of civil issues, as compared to maintaining some idea of like 1,000 years of peace, well, there it is. My thought of like the Zion representing 1,000 years of peace of U.S. 1,000 Grover Cleveland. At a minimum, seem to be the idea of separation in church and state at, the 12 photos Star Bank level, and what, the Christian religion involving the King James Version Bible is, as compared to maybe going beyond what would maybe be the thought of maybe American Amplified in a way of what, auditing legal media and deposition would only mean to like YouTube.com, okay? Or television itself. And, like I include like DirecTV quite a bit on some of my titles on a lot of my videos, as well as like ABC and CBS. And the thing about CBS is kind of like on Highway 59, okay? It's like the eye, okay? CBS, the address is at CBS, and it's the eye. And Channel 13 calls itself Eyewitness News, but the thing is that Channel 11 in the Houston area, being CBS, is the real symbolic representation of the eye, okay? And the thing of it is that, some idea of like programming, or alternate 90 representing some idea of like, CBS in Channel 11, like on Allen Parkway, is not really necessarily everyone's thought of maybe some idea of the Pentagon, just because an Allen wrench is like a 5-sided, shape of like, the Pentagon. Or the thought like of Highway 59 being like the eye in a more civil manner, and what the deity is on top of that pyramid in the way of like, Highway 59 being the Alpha 140 in Pearland, Texas. Channel 11 on north side of Highway 59. It's kind of like when it's now you see it, now you don't, as far as like being, able to see, hey, that's where it's at, It's kind of like, well, hey, where'd it go? It's like, well, it's still there. Or is it not? Or is that something like Univision? Some alternative alt-90 thing to Highway 290 in Austin Powers, and some idea of like degree level of whether dimensional cause is only be the thought of boycott and embargo or liquidable equity of maritime laws compared to making degree beyond local internet protocol, local area network, okay? And getting all amphibious about J. Edgar Hoover, and the thought of like being at a minimum, some idea of like some world class and world history involving, the pastel green and Province, and what the VIN number is to like transportation, or some Province, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so like it gets down into like geographic information is what like OnStar is, General Motors or GMAC Acceptance Corporation, the promissory notes that way, and the T note of Chase, the 10,000 T note thing about it, So like And, the James Madison US 5000 thing about it, and it seemed to be like whether or not if the James Madison thing is going to be the alphanumeric 123. Yeah, or some idea of ABC. But anyway, yeah, so like it's already going on like 45 minutes, like exactly. And anyway, so like I was kind of like thinking about the commercial venue because all this information involving like EBT and SNAP and Lone Star Card and student loan with the option of whether if it's going to be the student loan as with a grant or ultimately affecting some idea of like legal media and deposition as a litigation or de facto representing what a writ of habeas corpus might only be the effective jurisprudence and like what's going on in the classroom. Yeah, for real. I mean, if ultimately, forbearance is originate and totally turns the entire situation around from a default. I mean, really, is it really the idea of like a Ulysses as a grant presenting the issue of like litigation de facto, whether it's going to be the idea of like writs of habeas corpus or some idea of jurisprudence? I mean, is it a writ of habeas corpus? Or is it jurisprudence, hey, I like spreading it, but what's going on with the jurisprudence and black back about it? I mean, ultimately, I guess, what, like once again, Fox 29, so you probably heard the Roger Niner Foxtrot. I mean, it doesn't really normally identify, Calamity Jane as the Pony Express. I mean, that's pilot's terminology. Normally, the word affirmative action and affirmative is like the deal about pilots. And many people may have heard it, just watching television, the Roger Niner Foxtrot. I mean, most people thought a Foxtrot wouldn't really be the thought of like a, Fox 29 News in Philadelphia or like Benjamin Franklin or the 200-year celebration of America or some idea, some connectivity to Abraham Lincoln and night vision that way of, language involving Ajax and computer programming of like the kernel or some idea of like a color code that way of jurisprudence with a black back. I mean, it's the book and the law library with a black back. Yeah, like in a sprite and the province and as compared to the pastel green of nano units measured in night vision, the pastel green and the pastel red being measured in nano units for like night vision. It's automatically, got all that connectivity that way. But anyway, I'll go on and on. I've said quite a bit about this repeatedly. And it seemed to be like, really, I'm trying to stay focused on, talking about the commercial venue and actually, really getting a 5th floor with a basement. Yeah. All about music video, audio production, concert touring, and quite a bit about accommodations and everything about recording music video and audio production and distribution and manufacturing distribution and all that. And the 3-level, yeah, for real. And a Hill HX50, yeah. Yeah, helicopter, yeah, the blue one, yeah. And the flight simulation, yeah. Yeah, so like getting above it all and really putting some brains. I mean, it's amazing. Just talking sometimes it seems to be, that's all it is. I mean, really, based upon experience and just knowing certain factors is a whole new perception of, it's kind of like I saw my father going through a circuit. It's kind of like everything you've ever known. It's really not the way it is. And realizing that going through a circuit and everything is kind of like everything and memory minus factor seemed to be like a really big deal about the Stargate program. And years going by and not even realizing that memory really was the issue. And really, and 20, 25 years later, going on 30, it's kind of like, wow, didn't realize that memory really was the factor and the memory should have been the automatic memory like that long ago, right? So anyway, yeah, so like realizing that much about a Stargate program has been, my thought of even like the idea of like 30 something and some idea of like the actual age. But my birth year seemed to be like the Social Security Administration of the Social Security Administration 1-800-772-1213, presenting the L12 and the M13. Like once again, yeah, and ultimately it gets to the L64, which is actually the last 2 digits of my birth year, and yeah, and M65, and it's ultimately like the COVID ID 19 with the cumulative rollover Y2K. And sequencing characterization in sets of 4 based upon, using only 2 numbers. Although 1 and 0 is 2 numbers, like 12 is 1 number, okay? But it's 2 numbers, but it's really 1 number. And it's still sequencing characterization in sets of 4. I mean, really. It's still same principle, and it's still exactly that. Sequencing characterization in sets of 4, only using 2 numbers, like binary numbers. suggests is still like the last four of the Social Security Administration, my birth year, which is L12. And ultimately, you know, if you want to call from 8 to 26 one generation, and from 27 to what 52, then 53 to like what 78, and 79 to like 104, like four generations. L64 and M65 with like COVID 19, the cumulative rollover into the new millennium applied to, you know, like 64 and 65 is like 83 and 84, and the idea of like you know, winner. And there's a book and a chapter in The Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, Winners and Losers. Yeah, it seemed to be the book that has quite a bit of analytical, straightforward information based on its practical application intent in the book is really principle like in other areas, including like the New York Stock Exchange, as well as other factors of like the aggregates of monetary domestic gross national product, and the practical application of analytical principle. I mean, sometimes the analytical principle, when a person actually realizes and does it like enough to realize analytically, I mean, wow, it's like, wow, that is really it sometimes. And that's the way it is sometimes with like, I mean, just simple, you know, like stuff with like Grover Cleveland being the U.S. $1,000 bill, or having the connectivity of Zion and 1,000 years of peace, and what that is, you know, beyond normal person's perception normally of Christianity. I mean, you know, looking for it, or even having the time, you know, based upon what description only means of participation, gaining some meaning and value based upon participation, and having the time to do something like this is really quite a bit about supplemental security. I've spent like years like studying, and I've studied quite a bit, so much that I'm really just thinking about what I already have. Yeah, but there's like a lot of going on at the same time. But yeah, so, you know, it seemed to be like really getting a commercial venue, like a 5th floor with a basement and like all the generators and all that stuff. And it almost seemed to be the conversion of like generators, like the band Yes has the big generator, and it's like the colors of British Petroleum at the same time, yet the colors of the Sprite thing, and still yet of the generator presenting the issues of like what impedance and ambience would be on a traffic light, yet of nano units on a 13-band graphic equalizer representing like night vision, yet the same colors of American world history and world class presenting the pastel green as like province, and what event number is to transportation normally of like 13-band graphic equalizers of transportation now from America like 200, and like the Lord Jesus Christ and the plenipotentiary, what a province really is in color code of, you know, like the golf course, as compared to some idea of like jurisprudence and where that is all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and what repudiation really is in color code of the black back on jurisprudence, as compared to some idea of like a what litigation or de facto only means to maybe what a written habeas corpus might only suggest in programming, or what participation is based upon perception only might sound like based upon programming on television itself, okay, television, or some idea of like a PG-13 rating, some idea of maybe presidential and governor as compared to parental guidance, some idea of like some idea of absolute, whether it be, you know, the thought of PG-13 rating, a parental or presidential and governor as a rating, or what the real rating is, as compared to some idea of like you know, some idea of yeah. So I mean, all that tolerance as far as like a absolute value seemed to be like sometimes in my mind involving squelch. You know, it's in algebra, sometimes tech math, the absolute zero. And never once did I ever think of like squelch in that way. But the dial is almost exactly that. I mean, like, what is it there for? I'm just like, nothing. And it's really not that at all. It's just that really having some idea of like connectivity with like a you know, 8 ohms resistance involving like every like loudspeaker. I mean, like mega amps, like in concerts. You know, you hear like Sammy Hagar singing about the automatic 50,000 watts of power, and you know, stuff like that. I mean, you know, it's all like 8 ohms. Yeah, so I mean, ultimately it gets to the infinite lines and escapades and the figure eight of some idea of some vertical as compared to some horizontal and 90-degree right angle. of the number 8, the figure 8, and the zoom lens that way. Some idea of like perfect 10-10 vision using the stars. Yeah. So anyway, it's already going on like 54 minutes and like, yay, 53 seconds. So like, I think I'm going to take a break. Yeah. Because I'm trying to stay focused on, the commercial venue of Living Quarters and, place all the information because there's like quite a few sets of 3, like patent, copyright, and trademark and all that stuff, the sets of 3 in Mercedes symbolic emblem that way of what a 3-point is to the power squared, 3.1416, and, sequencing characterization in sets of 4 using 2 numbers like, the power square 3.146 and 14 and 16 being 30, and VantageLove30, the tennis score, likewise quadrants of the rectangle, all that stuff, okay? Even Y2K in singles is really, why 2 people are identified as singles. Yeah, in Y2K, like on the tennis court, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to take a break, okay? All right, talk to you later.